You just realized that you needed to hire someone yesterday. How can you find amazing candidates fast? Easy. Just use Indeed. When it comes to hiring, Indeed is all you need. Stop struggling to get your job posts seen on other job sites. Indeed sponsored jobs help you stand out and hire fast. With sponsored jobs, your post jumps to the top of the page for your relevant candidates so you can reach the people that you want faster. And it makes a huge difference. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs posted directly on Indeed have 45% more applications than non-sponsored jobs. Plus, with Indeed sponsored jobs, there's no monthly subscriptions, no long-term contracts, and you only pay for results. How fast is Indeed? Well, in the minute I've been talking to you, 23 hires were made on Indeed, according to Indeed data worldwide. There's no need to wait any longer. Speed up your hiring right now with Indeed. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/BWN. Just go to Indeed.com/BWN right now and support our show by saying that you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/BWN. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring? Indeed is all you need.
Listen, life's all about leveling up. Whether you're handling business on the field or kicking it in your zone, you like to celebrate with cigars that match the moment. That's why you should link up with Famous Cigars to bring you a wild deal. Right now, you can grab 8 premium cigars for just $8. You heard that right. 8 top-rated cigars at $1 a stick. Top quality brands like Oliva, Romeo y Julieta, and Davidoff. Handpicked just for you and worth over $80. Hit up famouscigars.com/cam and lock in this exclusive deal. While you're there, check out their insane selection of premium cigars, all shipped fresh and fast from their massive 20,000 square foot humidor. That's half a football field. Famous Cigars has been in the game since 1939 and still family owned. So celebrate every win with the folks at Famous. 8 cigars for $8. famouscigars.com/cam.
The Timeline is a Blue Wire podcast. Timeline of Phoenix Suns podcast. My name is Mike. I'm here with Sam. Sam, how's it going?
I'm doing pretty well. It has been an interesting week, I think, for Suns news in that we kind of got bombarded for a few days. And then since then, it's been all quiet on the Southwestern front and really, not all that much to speak of. So kind of a mixed bag. How are you feeling?
Not bad. I went out of town this last weekend, and it's funny because when I planned that trip, I thought, well, I was a little worried that I would be traveling during a game, during a Suns game. And then, that wasn't to worry during this trip. So it was actually slightly less stressful for me, but it still sucked that the Suns weren't playing.
Yeah.
And it's an interesting time for the off season because I've tend to split up the off season in my mind into like separate chunks. There's like this immediate post NBA season for the teams that don't make it to the finals, of course, where you sort of talk about the offseason as a whole. You switch into draft coverage, then it's free agent coverage, and then we often call post-draft, post-free agent, we call that optimism season, where everyone just sort of talks themselves into the idea of the team that they have. That's every fan base for every team. Every team makes the playoffs at that point. And I realized that this specific part of the season, I am now going to call Photoshop season. I think that is the name now, because right now, every team everywhere is Photoshopping every potentially available player into their jerseys right now. And that's all. So this is officially Photoshop season, I think.
Of which, honestly, I kind of looked at the free agent market for the first time not all that long ago, and the class this year is really weak. DeAndre Ayton, obviously.
It's bad.
He's a big name out there that some people are interested in, but it's kind of like people are getting especially creative with Photoshop this Photoshop season this year because they got to go for trades. They got to be creative. The free agent market is not out there to save you if you're most of these teams who even actually saved up some cap space, which means it opens up a whole world of possibilities that I guess we should.
It really does.
That we should talk about from a Suns angle as well. I mean, there was all sorts of shit flying this week.
I've seen Zach LaVine in a lot of different jerseys in the last week.
He's like the one.
That's what made it click for me.
He's like the one free agent, unrestricted swing candidate for sure, who it feels like he could go to a team, and I don't know what he's thinking, and I don't know what at this point in his career where he'd even be leaning, but he really does feel like the one guy who could actually swing some results in favor of some team. But other than that, it's a lot of inconsequential type stuff that we're talking about on the pure free agent market.
Well, he's especially interesting because the teams that have cap space in this offseason are basically all bad. Like, all of them are bad. So, like, he probably would not go to any of those. If you rank the free agents, maybe you put Zach LaVine number one. I think that's pretty obvious. Maybe you put Ayton second out of the free agent class. That's kind of where it's at. And maybe Ayton would be willing to play for a bad team if he got max money, and it's not really a concern for him as far as if the team's going to be great or not. But I think with LaVine it is, and that means that if he signs to his team separate from Chicago, it's likely going to be a sign and trade. And if it's important for Ayton too, a similar thing will happen. Ayton will have to negotiate some sort of sign and trade if he needs to sign to another team, and he has a good team as like one of the top reasons to go to that team. I think LaVine probably has a little more options there than Ayton. But let's talk about Ayton, because some interesting things came out about Ayton. It's 6 days ago now, but this is the first time you and I have recorded since then, as far as on this feed, so we got to talk about it. This is from Jake Fisher from Bleacher Report, and I know some people hear Bleacher Report and they're rolling their eyes. Let me just go to bat for Jake Fisher real quick. People, longtime listeners of this podcast know, I keep track of these guys, reporters, as far as which ones are reliable, which ones are not. Jake is extremely reliable, at least as of late. In fact, last offseason and going back to the 2020 offseason, he's basically gotten everything right. He's been sort of the first on a lot of things. So I do read this report with a little extra weight because of his recent history. So he also doesn't
take just quickly, he doesn't take press releases and pass them off as his own content, which is points for Jake Fisher on the national front, I will say.
He's almost, I would say, almost at like Woj and Shams level as far as like reliability at this point.
As far as reliability, I actually agree. He's way underground though. I can't think of a reference fast enough, but like Woj and Shams are still dominating the scene. He's a relative newcomer. Right. Anyway, the quote, which you have.
Well, a couple things. I think this is an article written where the first few paragraphs are about DeAndre Ayton in particular. First thing, there are 3 teams most often linked by league personnel as Ayton's potential suitors on the open market. These are interesting ones. Atlanta, who doesn't really have cap space, Detroit, and Portland. Portland, not a ton of cap space as well, but can create cap space. Detroit is one of the teams now that can create max cap space without doing basically anything. Atlanta, Detroit, and Portland. Multiple team executives have also pointed to Charlotte with a clear hole at center and San Antonio. Charlotte would also need to do a sign and trade or trade other pieces in order to make space, in order to have the space to sign DeAndre. And San Antonio, one of the other teams that could sign him outright. So just first of all, let's start there. San Antonio and Detroit, 2 teams with cap space that could sign DeAndre and are reportedly interested in DeAndre Ayton. Outside of that, teams without cap space, Atlanta, Portland. Portland could create cap space. I'll say it again. Atlanta, Portland, and Charlotte. Anything stand out about those teams for you when you first heard that report?
Not especially. I should have looked at the numbers before we recorded here. Atlanta, they also have like a little bit of cap space, right? They're just
a little bit.
Obviously not enough to sign him outright. We're still talking about sign and trades, but it's more feasible for a team with, say, in the 5 to 10 million cap range, and I don't know exactly where they are, but just putting that out there. Of those 5 teams, if you're asking me to react to like I don't know, like who's the best Ayton fit, or who's the best trade partner, or what are you looking for specifically?
Anything that stands out to you. For me, I look at Atlanta. Atlanta has like a kind of a mess of a cap sheet. They have Bogdanovich at like $20 million. They still have Gallinari for like high teens in the millions, and they still have Capella at like a pretty significant amount of money too. They do have some contracts falling off at some point. DeAndre Hunter will need to be signed by them at some point in the future if they want to keep DeAndre Hunter. And then, of course, they have John Collins, who signed for close to a max contract essentially with them. So they have a lot of pieces they could potentially move to get DeAndre Ayton. If the Suns are interested in any of those, the obvious one is Capella, because the Suns could replace Ayton with Capella, who a lot of people like. Capella is just the worst player.
Yeah, just be careful how you say that, because the Suns could replace DeAndre Ayton with Clint Capella, but they couldn't replace DeAndre Ayton with Clint Capella, if you know what I mean. Yeah.
The best way to describe the difference between Clint Capella and DeAndre Ayton is their free throw percentage. I think just look at that alone, and you sort of understand the limits of Capella compared to DeAndre Ayton. But it's obviously somebody that people are going to point at. Detroit, if they're willing to go young, the Suns could potentially do a sign and trade for Jeremy Grant. They don't need to. Detroit could sign DeAndre Ayton without that, but it is something that maybe they want to move on from Jeremy Grant and give the ball more to their younger guys and let them do some things. So that's something to point at, and something that Jake Fisher mentioned in the article as well. Portland is interesting. I'm not sure what their plan is in this offseason. I'll be 100% honest. Are they going to keep Damian Lillard and try to compete? I'm not sure. But let's move on to the next part of this report. The other thing that Jake said is this is the quote from the article, the recent Monty Williams dynamic may simply echo consistent word dating back to the trade deadline from league sources with knowledge of the situation that Ayton is not particularly a favorite of Phoenix's head coach.
I love the way that's worded.
Williams has purportedly griped about Ayton's waning focus, which some people contacted by Bleacher Report said has often been reflected by the ebbs of his playing time. So this report essentially says, this report from somebody that we believe to be credible says something that is no surprise to anybody that's been watching DeAndre Ayton for a long time. And that is, to me, that coaching DeAndre Ayton is probably incredibly frustrating. What did you think of this part?
I think this is one of those things that's 100% true. I don't doubt it for a second, but is also so entirely blown out of proportion. Because just judging from the type of man that Monty Williams is, the way that we've always caught him speaking about his players, at least in a public-facing way to the media, he doesn't do these vicious attacks on like his guy's character. Like it's kind of worded maliciously here, but purportedly griped about Ayton's waning focus. Give me a Suns fan who hasn't griped about Ayton's waning focus from game to game. Like, a diehard Suns fan who's watched him in every game over the past several seasons. Basically all of us, maybe there are a couple of people in a small camp who have legitimately never complained about DeAndre Ayton over the past 4 years. But they're a very, very small minority. The vast majority of us have complained about his focus at one time or another. It doesn't mean we haven't also admitted the aspects of his game that have been incredible. But, when you go out like the Suns did in Game 7, ultimately what we always said on this podcast, Mike, I remember, is we complained about Ayton's waning focus, but we always said it doesn't matter if he has stretches like this in the regular season as long as he shows up when it matters in the playoffs. Then Game 7 comes in the playoffs, and of course, as I stressed last week, and I'll stress again, it wasn't just DeAndre Ayton's fault that the Suns shat the bed in Game 7. All of the players bear that responsibility roughly equally. On the other hand, there was only one guy who quit on the game halfway through and had, I guess, what you could maybe call a meltdown, and that was DeAndre Ayton. So, of course, reports like this are going to come out afterwards. I don't know. It doesn't, I feel like people want to latch onto any drama that they possibly can and, have these mental images of, Monty Williams and DeAndre Ayton having screaming matches at each other, but it's not like that. It's just saying that he's a little bit frustrated at the prospect of having to coach this guy, which I think anyone who's watched DeAndre over the past few years, that should just be obvious to all of us.
Yeah, and Ayton, I think, as far as what you're talking about with the difference between the regular season and playoffs, I'll say two things about that. one, it probably doesn't matter to us as far as the waning focus in the regular season. But I think to the players in the team, to Monty Williams, it probably matters a little bit more. And there's a part of that I think I want to point to. The first part of this quote, the recent Williams dynamic may simply echo consistent word dating back to the trade deadline. And that's about Monty Williams' frustration with DeAndre Ayton. Well, what happened at the trade deadline, Sam? The Suns almost traded DeAndre Ayton.
Oh, you're talking about the Sabonis? You're talking about the Sabonis report?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
sure.
If it came to a head early enough in the season where Monty Williams was frustrated enough with Ayton this season, and in a season that you and I both thought that DeAndre Ayton played really well, there was something going on, I think, that bothered Monty Williams about him to the point where they almost traded him. So I think that points to something to me, something more than what I thought was there before. And this is one of those things I think that I point at and say where I think that a sign and trade is maybe a little more possible than some people say, because I think maybe the Suns are maybe a little more done with him than we thought.
Can I bring up what I think may be an obvious, almost rhetorical question, but I think for the sake of discussion is important to that it has representation?
Sure.
Why be loyal to Monty Williams over DeAndre Ayton if this is true?
Yeah.
If this rift is serious, why commit to Monty Williams? Why not commit to DeAndre Ayton? And this is a little extreme, but kick Monty Williams to the curb, or I don't know, whatever I guess you'd have to do. You know, like, have you thought about that? It wouldn't
be the first time. Yeah, wouldn't be the first time. I mean, right. Luka Doncic, that happened with Luka. Right? They chose Luka, fired their coach.
The coach is usually the first scapegoat, if we're being entirely honest. So it's pretty impressive, actually, that I think the organization, at least based on the info we have now, backs Monty to the extent they do, given the colossal failure in that series. I think that's the right move, by the way, but it's just,
that makes me
don't always
that
survive.
Really makes me wonder what they really truly think about DeAndre and when you put it in those particular words. And the other part I want to bring up too, added to that, is you talk about Game 7 in particular. So much focus is on Game 7. Ayton was kind of checked out for more than that, I would say, in those 7 games against Dallas. Kevon Looney had 19 offensive rebounds in 5 games for the Golden State Warriors. Do you know how many DeAndre Ayton had in 7 games?
8, 12? I don't know.
He had 20.
Oh. Okay, sure.
So more, but significantly less per game. And it's funny because it's hard to really...
20 and 7 versus 19 and 5? That's not
5, yes.
That's not bad. It's all right.
It's hard to really pinpoint effort. Like DeAndre Ayton had 6 in games 5, 6, and 7 combined. There was a game where Kevon Looney had 7, a game where Kevon Looney had 6. Examples of effort. You can point at him not getting the ball at times, and that could be something that you can, I think, blame on a coach if you'd like to, because there are significant ways to get the ball to a center in an offensive set. But offensive rebounds is one of those things that often, against a smaller team, is often effort-based. And that's one of those things that you could point at and say maybe the effort wasn't quite there, at least towards the end of the series. And then, of course, this is essentially the first report over the time that DeAndre Ayton has been with Phoenix about something that I think is like relatively obvious that could have existed, because he is somebody who has waning focus at times. And it'll be interesting to see, there are smoke screens that come up this time of year. There are things that are released by the team. There are things that are released by agents. There are things released by different teams that are just trying to mess with teams that have situations like this. This one appears to be true. Like I said, I trust Jake Fisher, but I think it just paints an interesting picture of Monty Williams, James Jones, and DeAndre Ayton.
Yeah, again, I trust it, but I'm not overly frustrated by this aspect of the report or anything.
It's no surprise.
Let me ask you about this, though, because we didn't touch on the other part of this report here that says there's a stronger sense among league figures that Phoenix Brass simply does not view Ayton or any center as a player worth greater than $30 million annually.
Right.
That's interesting too, right? Isn't that really... Is that a smokescreen, or do you believe that aspect as well? Because that, I feel like, is kind of insane philosophically. And before you start, because I feel like I don't even know if you agree with this or not, actually, but I understand where the basketball argument, looking at it in like modern basketball terms or whatever, is going to come from, that says you should not pay a center more than $30 million per year. But even so, to make a statement as broad as that and essentially cancel out one of the 5 positions and just say we're not going to pay a guy big money at this, like, that's pretty insane to say that, which makes me distrust this aspect of the report, or maybe James Jones is actually kind of nuts.
Read it again, because I want to point out how it's worded.
It says, okay, you want me to read the full thing? There's a stronger sense among league figures that Phoenix brass.
Yeah.
So coming from outside sources, I understand, what you're saying there.
Yeah.
Phoenix brass simply does not view Ayton or any center.
It's not a source within the Suns, I guess, is the point that I was going to make. So do I think the Suns would not max any center? No.
Right,
because if they'd max Jokic, they'd max Karl Anthony Towns, they'd max Embiid, they'd probably max Bam Adebayo, they'd probably max.
You think they'd max Karl Anthony Towns?
Draymond Green, if you count him.
Because I think
they'd probably.
I think that's interesting as well. But yeah, I mean,
the offensive versatility is just so drastically different. I think the way you have to build a team around Karl Anthony Towns would obviously be incredibly different than you'd build a team around DeAndre Ayton. But I do think that there is a chance they don't want to give DeAndre Ayton a max because they could have done it already. And they didn't. And really, that's all you need. If you're a league source that is giving something to Jake Fisher on the side, that's kind of all you need. And you could say that. But this is what leads us to Photoshop season, by the way. Because in this same week that the strife between DeAndre Ayton and Monty Williams was reported, the New York Daily News, your home state, reported that Kevin Durant and the Nets have not spoken since the Nets were swept, and that the Nets were unwilling to give Kyrie Irving a full max contract. They also heavily implied that if the Nets do not come to a deal with Kyrie Irving, Kevin Durant will be somewhere else next season. The implication here, of course, is that the Nets want off the crazy ride that is Kyrie Irving.
And who can blame them, really?
And who could blame them after that? I mean, I'm fascinated to see if any team is willing to give Kyrie Irving a max contract.
What sort of return on investment did they get out of that whole Kyrie Irving thing? You know, not even speaking about Kyrie Irving, the person, and you know, anything related to that, but just as a pure basketball investment.
Not to mention the whole team was supposed to be Kyrie Irving, Kevin Durant, and James Harden this year, and it ended up not even being that. So if you're coming at it from Kevin Durant's perspective, it's already not what it was supposed to be. Now he has Ben Simmons, who just had back surgery, hasn't played in a year, and who knows if he's ever going to step foot on a basketball court again. And Kyrie Irving, who missed half the games by refusing to get vaccinated, and of course now is in an aspect of free agency where he may not be given a max contract by anyone. And I think that puts Kevin Durant in an interesting position. Will Kevin Durant want to stay regardless of the Kyrie Irving situation? Is this an opportunity for him to leave regardless of that? But the Suns have an opportunity, essentially, to make some sort of play at Kevin Durant. And I know some people are thinking, that's insane. Why are we even talking about this? First of all, it's the offseason. This is when you talk about this kind of thing. But second of all, I'll just say it flatly. If Kevin Durant is available, the Suns need to do everything they possibly can to bring Kevin Durant to Phoenix, because I think they have the kind of assets that they could use to trade for him, and that gets complicated. We'll talk about that in a second. But also, Kevin Durant, Devin Booker played in the Olympics together. They clearly are friends. Kevin Durant said he wanted the Thunder to draft Devin Booker. Durant called Phoenix one of his favorite places to go during the season. And Monty Williams and Kevin Durant have a long relationship dating back to OKC, where they clearly get along very, very well. So what are your thoughts on Kevin Durant and Photoshop season, Sam?
Friends with Chris Paul, too, by the way. He's praised Chris plenty in the past. Yeah, I mean, I understand the temptation for people to come out and say this is crazy. Why are we getting our hopes up? But given all of the connections that we just listed, the fact that it's feasible to do it under the CBA rules with a trade, and also the fact that if you just look at KD's options around the league for, like, theoretically, because here's the thing about KD. he clearly cares about his legacy. No superstar in the NBA of this current generation, maybe ever, will tell you that they don't care what other people say about them more than Kevin Durant. What does that mean? He clearly cares quite a bit what other people say about him. And if he's looking at all of his options around the league right now and just surveying the field, where can he go and win a ring? The beauty of there being so much parity in the NBA right now, I mean, Phoenix is one of his best options. There are other options as well. He could force a trade elsewhere if he really wanted to.
Yeah.
But Phoenix is by far one of his best options. If you put together a so-called big three of Kevin Durant, Devin Booker, Chris Paul, building out the rest of the team might be a little challenging around that, and I guess we can touch on that in a second. But yeah, he's one of his best opportunities is here, no doubt. And I don't think it's that insane of a proposition, really, to bring it up.
And let's explain why it wouldn't be that insane of a proposition and the potential roadblocks of that happening. But let's just quickly go over what it could take. So the first option, if for some reason the Nets were like, all right, we're not going to sign Kyrie Irving, it's not worth the risk, and if that means we trade Kevin Durant, fine, we can rebuild again, maybe even build for cap space in the future, whatever they want to do, they can build with young players. And so the Suns, how could the Suns trade for Kevin Durant? Yes, he has a lot of salary. Yes, it gets complicated with DeAndre Ayton. If DeAndre Ayton were to agree to a sign and trade to the Nets for a max contract, the easiest possible way to get Kevin Durant is a trade of a DeAndre Ayton sign and trade and Mikal Bridges for Kevin Durant. That gets it done. That works. That's legal under the CBA.
Right, because
the money works.
Yep, because Durant makes $41 million next season. DeAndre Ayton would be making $30 million on his max, but remember, he only counts as $15 million because of the base year compensation rule that we covered last week with David. He counts as $15 million going out and then $30 million coming in. So it would be his $15 million plus Mikal's. I don't have the number in front of me, but it's
22.
It's either 20
basically.
or it's between 20 and 22. And then you have a little bit of wiggle room under the rules of the CBA.
25%.
So, yeah, you can get there. The point is you can get there. And
that would be easy. And so like for the Nets, Kyrie Irving gone. They have Ben Simmons. Now they can say, okay, we have Ben Simmons, we have Mikal Bridges, we have DeAndre, and we're going to have the best defense in the East, and we're going to build around 3 young players and go forward from there. It'll be fun to watch. It may not be a contender right away, but it'll be fun to watch.
I mean, it's still kind of
on defense.
Still kind of a disaster scenario for them, given this imploding in their faces. But that being said, this could maybe be one of the best possible situations that they could make of that implosion. I don't know how many better packages they could get than a DeAndre and Mikal Bridges package. And from the Suns fan,
with the first round pick thrown in or two,
of course. And from the and who cares? Give them all the picks they want. From a Suns perspective, it's like, I actually saw a couple of people online saying, well, I wouldn't give up DeAndre Ayton and Mikal Bridges. That's too much. Like, it's Kevin Durant. I don't care if he's 34
He'd be
or whatever.
the best player on the team.
Yeah,
right away.
You can fill out the rest of the roster with cheap quasi 3-and-D players. You're not going to get the exact thing. You're not going to get a perfect imitation of Mikal Bridges on a veteran minimum replacement. But you can get most of the way there, or some of the way there at least. And Kevin Durant plus Devin Booker, all I know is that is an insane amount of difficult shot making, which is exactly what you need to win playoff games and what the Suns lacked this season. Chris Paul could be like entirely kind of in the back seat. Orchestrating the offense still, but in terms of a score, he could be solidly behind the other two. As a third option, he could score 11 or 12 points per game if he wanted to. Cameron
Johnson starting, shooting shots off of the gravity.
You could still re-sign Cameron Johnson and insert him into the starting lineup somewhere. Wouldn't be that hard to make this work. I think it's pretty easy to.
And you still have Jay Crowder.
Team. Yeah.
In that scenario, you still could even have Jay Crowder. Imagine a small ball 5 with Kevin Durant at center with those guys on the floor. I know what some people are thinking already. Is there any way to do that without Mikal Bridges? I know that's a question that we're going to get. And yeah, you could, potentially. Why would the Nets do it? I don't know. But here's how. Mikal Bridges, DeAndre Ayton. Without Mikal. So you have DeAndre Ayton, Cameron Johnson, Dario Saric, Jay Crowder. That eliminates a lot of your depth. They still get a young player in Cameron Johnson. with DeAndre, and then you probably have to throw some extra picks in there. That actually is possible as well. You keep Mikal Bridges. You no longer have Cameron Johnson. They have the ability to sign Cameron Johnson to an extension before the extension deadline, and then they'd have DeAndre Ayton on a max contract. They still have Jay Crowder, who they can trade, and Dario Saric, who they can keep. They can keep both those guys. Now they have pretty significant depth. Makes it a little more complicated with creating the roster spots that they need, but it's still possible in that scenario with those 4 guys. And just because somebody's going to ask, can you do it without Cameron Johnson and Mikal Bridges? Why would they do that? I'm going to ask you right now. They want 2 young players for Kevin Durant. He's that good. But yes, Ayton, Dario, Jay, and like Craig probably get you
Shamet or something, right? Or Shamet might be too much, honestly.
Shamet will get you there, yeah. And then you put like 5 first-round picks in there because they're not getting anything for that, and they hope that it falls apart, which with Durant, nothing is guaranteed. He's signed for a long contract, and here's what people might say: why would he get to choose where he's going if he's getting traded? Well, ask James Harden. There are ways for superstars at that level to force themselves to where they want to go. Otherwise, they could become a problem for another team that don't want to do it. So the best way to get there is Durant wants to play in Phoenix, doesn't want to play in the Nets. Kyrie Irving is gone. And then the main roadblock that you would run into is DeAndre Ayton would have to want to play in Brooklyn. And I think if they're willing to give him a max, he probably would.
Which, given all of his other options potentially this offseason and the fact that we talked about how none of them would be great teams to begin with, winding up in Brooklyn, New York City of all places, does not seem like the worst location in the world. Kevin Durant, by the way, would be making $53 million in his age 37 season on this contract, but I don't give a shit. I don't give a single shit about that. It's you're pushing all your chips into the center of the table for the chance at a ring within the next year or two, basically. And if it blows up in your face, it blows up in your face. But it's bold. That's
what you play for.
Honestly, man, whether it's Kevin Durant or whatever, like I was bringing up other names this week that people liked a lot less than Kevin Durant. Let's just put it that way. I don't have to repeat it here. But I've challenged James Jones in the face of failure, colossal failure in the playoffs this year, to be not afraid of being bold this time around. And if he does anything that's bold, I cannot then turn around and be a hypocrite and say that, I'll have to at least respect the boldness. So this is a move where it would be easy to respect the boldness, but there are other ones too.
Let's just say, what could it take to blow this up? Well, easy. The Nets could sign Kyrie. Yeah. And if that's all it takes to keep Durant, maybe they will do that. And maybe that's not enough for Durant. We don't really know because he literally hasn't spoken to the Nets since they were swept. DeAndre Ayton, of course, would have to agree to it as well. Those are probably the biggest roadblocks that you could run into. I don't think the Suns would be too precious with their assets when it comes to a player who gets along with their star player and coach really well, and their other star player in Chris Paul. But like the future of the team would be the combination of Monty Williams, Devin Booker, and Kevin Durant. I think that they would not be too precious with their assets in that case. I imagine they'd want to keep one of Mikal or Cam Johnson, but be willing to put one of those 2 guys in that trade in order to get Kevin Durant. And honestly, that might be enough as long as Durant wants to be in Phoenix and Ayton would be willing to go to New York. So, look, is it likely? No.
We're on the Vegas betting odds for it, though. You can go and place a bet for it, and we're on the books.
The main thing is, and this was, sorry for those who didn't hear it, but on the Patreon mailbag that we had recently, we talked about that there are a few players who are just absolute ceiling raisers, where when you have them on the team, you're just in contention for a title. And Durant is one of those guys if you put the right guys around him. And Chris Paul and Devin Booker are almost one of those guys right now. Maybe Devin Booker will get there. Chris Paul probably not at this point. He's just who he is.
Good supporting piece, but yeah.
When you have an opportunity to get one of those guys, do not sit on your hands, even if it's unlikely. And that's the only point I want to make talking about this. Do you have anything else to add?
It's going to happen.
Photoshop.
Get excited, people. It's going to happen.
Yeah, let's take a quick break and come back and talk about Devin Booker.
You just realized that you needed to hire someone yesterday. How can you find amazing candidates fast? Easy. Just use Indeed. When it comes to hiring, Indeed is all you need. Stop struggling to get your job posts seen on other job sites. Indeed-sponsored jobs help you stand out and hire fast. With sponsored jobs, your post jumps to the top of the page for your relevant candidates so you can reach the people that you want faster. And it makes a huge difference. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs posted directly on Indeed have 45% more applications than non-sponsored jobs. Plus, with Indeed-sponsored jobs, there's no monthly subscriptions, no long-term contracts, and you only pay for results. How fast is Indeed? Well, in the minute I've been talking to you, 23 hires were made on Indeed, according to Indeed data worldwide. There's no need to wait any longer. Speed up your hiring right now with Indeed. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/BWN. Just go to Indeed.com/BWN right now and support our show by saying that you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/BWN. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring? Indeed is all you need.
All right, this last week, I should say, the NBA announced the All-NBA teams, and there were 2 Phoenix Suns players on the All-NBA teams. Devin Booker was named to the first team, and Chris Paul was named to the third team. So that's 2 Suns players on the All-NBA teams for the first time in a very long time. And Devin Booker making first team now makes him eligible for a Supermax. So let's talk about that Supermax in a second, but let's quickly just talk about this. Devin Booker, much maligned throughout his career, much hated by a lot of people for various reasons, now made first team All-NBA. That is a pretty cool accomplishment for Devin Booker, who was picked 13th by the Phoenix Suns by a terrible general manager who kind of lucked into that pick. And he's now first team All-NBA. That's pretty cool.
Definitely pretty cool. Little bittersweet still with the timing of the announcement. I wish they just announced these at the end of the regular season so that we could celebrate them a little bit more and not think about what happened afterwards. But one thing I want to look up here, and I guess I will at some point, that's pretty cool about this timing for Booker. It's his first All-NBA appearance. How often do you think it happens that someone makes their first All-NBA appearance and it's instantly a first team? You know, I feel like a lot of guys gradually climb the ladder. And they start by, you're recognized kind of as a top 15 player. You make a third team or a second team, and eventually you get there. For Book to get there right away, obviously he's been an all-star a few times already, but to get there right away, that's pretty cool. And we do know it was narrative-based. You know, we do know it was all about being the best scorer on the best record. But even so.
Yeah, but like shooting guards, the All-NBA teams are based around position. Like, who else was even in contention? I guess it's Luka that you would probably.
Yeah, well, it's not shooting guards.
I don't have the teams in front of me.
It's just guards, and there are plenty of good guards.
Yeah,
there are plenty of good guards in the NBA still. Like, it's going to continue to be a competitive position for him. I don't know, man. There's so many. There's also so many guards in this league who can fill it up and get 30, and it's like any potential season where they just get the right guys around them and have a 55-60 win season, it's like you kind of gotta give it to them. I was thinking about
stay healthy. Right? Just health is important.
Health is definitely very important. One guy I was thinking about the other day, and I'm not like comparing him to Booker necessarily outright, but just in terms of the overall guard discussion, was I was thinking about how low people are on Bradley Beal now, and I kind of feel like my perception of Bradley Beal, perhaps rightly so, has been very much negatively impacted in the past couple of years, but like still feels like a guy who could just have a great season if the Wizards put together a decent team one year and he puts up 28 points per game and all of a sudden he's first team All-NBA. You know, it kind of just works like that in terms of the narrative. So it's not always predictable is all I mean to say.
Yeah, it's a good thing for him to win, and it's still deserved. And then, of course, Chris Paul on the third team. It was a reminder, I think, for Chris Paul because of how badly it ended for Chris Paul. Just how good he was this season. He was incredible. One of the best fourth quarter scorers in the NBA and had one of his best assist to turnover ratios he's ever had and some of his highest assist averages he's ever had. Led the league in total assists this season as well, I believe. So it's just one of those seasons for Chris Paul where he was incredible throughout. And then, of course, it ended not very well for him. So it was easy to forget. But then that third team All-NBA announcement came out, and it was just a reminder that Chris Paul was pretty good this year. And it was happy to be reminded of that, and I hope he's healthy and plays well next year as well. It'll be interesting to see how these last 2 years of his contract go, depending on what ends up happening with him going forward. But Devin Booker, and for those who don't know how this works, Devin Booker, if he were to win an MVP, Defensive Player of the Year, I believe, is another one of them, or make an All-NBA team, he would be eligible for a Supermax extension. He now has made that team. Basically, guys on our max contract, if they make those teams, are eligible for a massive extension. The Supermax extension, would begin in 24-25. It's 35% of the cap and has 8% raises. The Suns could do it, I think, for 4 or 5 years.
It would be
it's 4 years,
right? $211 million. It would start him at $47 million in the first season. That would be 2 years from now. It would end at $58 million in his age 31 season. And again, the entire premise behind the Supermax is being 35% of the cap, like you said.
So just 35% of the cap on the date that it's signed, right? Because the cap only goes up.
That's important. That's very important. But
it's extremely important because it would be 35% of the 2022 cap, essentially. And the cap is expected to spike in 2024 with new TV money, potentially some gambling money thrown in. Revenues go up all around, and then the overall cap raises significantly. One of the main reasons I think it's important to sign Devin Booker to this Supermax contract as soon as you possibly can. But Sam, you and I apparently had differing opinions on the comfortability of Devin Booker signing the Supermax. What are your thoughts on it? I want to hear.
You're trying to throw me into some shit.
You deserve a chance to explain yourself because I think people were jumping down your throat a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, you could say that again. I mean, I don't have the tweet up here or anything. I'm not gonna bring it back up. But so here's the thing. First of all, I guess we only just barely touched on the fact that it was smart business, but I really feel like we should reiterate that. Like the last time the cap jumped in 2016, specifically because of the old TV deal expiring and the new one coming in, right? The new TV revenue flooding the league chose to do something which ended up, I think you could argue, being disastrous in terms of not smoothing the cap and allowing all of this new money to flow in one season. As far as I remember, the cap jumped from, it was $70 million, and I want to say like 2015, it jumped up to $94 million the next season. The biggest direct consequence of that was that the Golden State Warriors were able to sign Kevin Durant, which is why I say in hindsight we could maybe say that was a disastrous move for the league, depending on how you look at it. But that's a 32% increase in cap money year over year. So I want to reiterate that if that happens again, when the next TV deal expires at the end of the 24-25 season, Booker would still have 3 seasons left on this hypothetical extension, his age 29, 30, 31 season. If another 32, and I don't know what the projection is at this point, I don't think they've put one out, but if another theoretically 32% cap jump happens, then of course you sign him as soon as possible. It's smart business because then he's not making 35% of the cap. He'd be making 25 or 26 or 28% of the cap or something like that. You understand how it is. So,
yeah, basically what he makes now.
Smart business. I'm all for rewarding Devin Booker. I'm all for giving him the money because you have no other choice, right? It's either you give him.
Well, we just spent a significant amount of time talking about the fact that Kevin Durant may want to play in Phoenix because Devin Booker is here.
Yeah, and I guess here's the only thing that I guess maybe I could have phrased better, but also maybe could get me in trouble, or I don't know. But I have this. It's not even so much about Booker. I have this frustration where I do feel like the Supermax rules, which only came into place a few years ago, are still kind of bullshit. That the qualifications for being a Supermax player are not stringent enough. Because it just feels dumb to me that, think about this. You said the requirements for being eligible for a Supermax. Basically, we've set up an ecosystem where anyone who's eligible for a Supermax, it's just expected that organization is going to give it to them because the other possibility is a potentially disastrous fracturing of team chemistry or something, right? So that means anyone who makes an All-NBA team or the Defensive Player of the Year or the MVP. MVP makes sense. Defensive player of the year maybe in some cases makes sense. If Mikhail,
well, guess who's on a Supermax?
Marcus Smart.
Rudy Gobert.
Oh yeah. Well, could you imagine Marcus Smart if he clamors for a Supermax now? But I just like. It's not that I want to take anything away from Devin Booker, but to use Booker as an example, why should Devin Booker be making 35% of the cap, and then a player like Giannis Antetokounmpo is also only making 35% of the cap? If I had it my way, because you understand from a team building perspective, there's a difference between those two players. We can admit it. And the holes that you're going to be faced with having to fill in the rest of the pieces around Booker are going to be more challenging than the holes filling in the rest of a roster around a guy like Giannis, right? If I had it my way, and I understand the Players Union doesn't want to go for this because they feel that it would depress the mid-sized salaries, the so-called middle class of the league. But if I had it my way, just open up negotiations for anything. Like if you want to give Giannis 60% of your salary cap, do it. Like the teams should be totally you should still have a soft cap and then a luxury tax and a tax apron and a hard cap after that. But if teams want to give a player like Giannis, for instance, 60% of their cap and then Booker still gets his 35% or whatever, they should be totally within their rights to do that. And furthermore, here's what I think it would do. I think it would do two things. It would reward good GMing because it would force GMs to focus a little bit more on depth and finding kind of underrated talent that they could then use to fill out the rest of the roster and really focus on fit. And I think it would increase parity around the league because you wouldn't have this kind of awkward situation where Booker, who is admittedly a good player, but would also be making the same amount of money as objectively the first or second or third best players in the NBA. I just think it's
how about the Warriors? How about the Warriors this year making the finals with the largest salary of any team ever?
Yeah.
There's still a way to do it in the current way the NBA works. Can I just read you a list, by the way, of the... Or do you want to... Let's see if you can guess. There's 9 NBA players currently on a Supermax deal. I gave you one of them in Rudy Gobert, who signed one in the 2020-2021 season. That was the first year he had it. Do you want to try to guess the other 8 players?
There's 9. Okay, there's 9 players on a Supermax deal. Does it specifically... Can you remind me? It has to be guys they signed it when they were between years like 7 and 9 or something, right? So it's
and I think the first year you could do it was like the 17-18 season. So like the Supermax didn't exist until some things that
basically means it's going to be guys who are like around 30-ish now.
Well,
no, am I wrong?
Well, let's see. Go ahead.
Durant, is he there?
He is not.
What? Okay, so I'm already wrong. So is he too old?
Yeah.
So who's a little bit younger?
I don't know why he doesn't have one. I'll have to look into his contract history. Harden is one
I'm trying to get a feel for like the right generation. Okay, so let's start with Harden. Yeah. Harden, Westbrook?
Okay. Westbrook is one of them.
Okay.
There's one of the examples of it going badly.
Okay. Curry?
Curry is one of them.
You already said Gobert, right? So we've got 5 left?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
This one might be dumb. John Wall?
Yes.
Okay. We've got 4 left. Who else is in that generation? Who would be... Not Kyrie, right? No, because Kyrie's coming up on the end of his contract now, so clearly not.
Yeah.
Fuck, this is difficult. LeBron would not have been eligible, right?
He is not.
Because he's too old.
He's too old, yeah. And he's on a massive deal anyway.
How is Gobert one of these 9 guys?
He won Defensive Player of the Year
in
2019 and then signed it in 2020.
All right,
He was 2020 All-NBA 13.
I'm going to kick myself, but give me the other 4.
Giannis,
of course. Okay.
Antetokounmpo.
I thought maybe he was
Lillard.
Too young. Okay, Dame, that's a good one. Yep.
Joel Embiid.
Okay.
And then finally, the youngest player by a large amount on this list. Do you want to just take any crack if I give you that hint?
The youngest player on the list. Give me his... No, don't give me his draft class year. That would be too easy. That would make it too easy. The youngest player...
It would be very easy, and you would kick yourself for missing it.
The youngest player on the list. He was drafted after Giannis?
Yeah.
And he's on a Supermax?
He is.
Someone's yelling at me right now in their car or wherever they're listening to this.
His name is Luka Doncic, and he made 2 All-NBA first teams in his first in 2020 and 2021 in his first 4 years.
Oh,
he was
so
able to
that's
sign a
why he
Supermax
was
extension.
already eligible. Oh, of course.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah, that is insane.
Yeah, I mean, that's usually you're not eligible for a Supermax extension as early as Luka Doncic
would have never gotten that.
Because most players don't get All-NBA in their first contract. Luka Doncic did it twice and was able, actually 3 times now, in fact, if I'm not mistaken, and was able to sign that Supermax after the second time he got All-NBA. So there's 9 players. I think Devin Booker is worthy addition to that list. And I understand what you mean in that the complications of building around Devin Booker could be more complicated than somebody like even Kevin Durant, who we just spent time talking about, or Luka Doncic, or LeBron James, or Giannis Antetokounmpo, Stephen Curry.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's just purely, I just want, to make it clear, it's purely about pragmatic team building. It has nothing to do with the emotional attachment to Devin Booker or whatever. I hate Devin Booker. Obviously, I don't. It's just, it becomes a little bit more difficult. And yeah, again, my only solution to this is not that you shouldn't pay Devin Booker. You obviously pay Devin Booker and just suck it up. My solution, though, would be to open up those thresholds and say, hey, Luka, you want $60, $70, $80 million a year? Well, now someone can give it to you if they so choose. And then it's going to be really difficult for them to build a team around you, but let them try. That's what I would do.
A couple things about Devin Booker. His Supermax extension, starting at $47 million, would kick in 2024-25 season. That would be, as far as I know, the year that the cap would increase. That's also the year that has fully non-guaranteed money for Chris Paul. So they could get rid of the entirety of Chris Paul's $30 million of that year and basically have a relatively clean cap sheet depending on who they end up having. Of course, Mikal Bridges would still be signed at that point, and DeAndre Ayton, if he signs a max here, would still be under contract. Cameron Johnson, if he signs an extension, but that would be it. And the Suns would, of course, there are other players they would sign in the meantime, and it would depend on how long those deals are, but they could set themselves up, even with that massive contract for Devin Booker, to be a player in free agency in that year if they wanted to be. It's really, I know what you mean, Sam, but in this case in particular, because of the cap increase that's coming, it's actually not that limiting when it comes to team building.
Oh, yeah, it's smart.
It's super easy for the Suns. They reward him for the winning that he brought to the team. Of course, Chris Paul wanted to play here because of him. Maybe Durant does too. Who knows? And of course, he's a great player. He's the best player on the team by a significant amount and is likely going to be, this is essentially taking him through the end of his overall athletic peak. And it's just an easy decision to make. So I hope the Suns do it as soon as they can. They don't need to do it right away, right? They got some things to worry about before that. But before the end of the extension period comes, the Suns, I have a feeling, will have inked this deal for Devin Booker, and he will be signed through the end of 2028 season. Wow. So that's good news.
That's a long time, man. Do you even think about think about where you're going to be in 2028? That's like so far in the future.
I don't know. I don't want to. Yeah. Will this podcast still exist? I guess will be the question at that point. Maybe it'll be our jobs by then if Durant comes to Phoenix. Did you see the Reddit account that was claiming to have knowledge of Robert Sarver being forced to sell the team this offseason as soon as the season's over?
I did see that.
What do you think?
I didn't know we were going to bring that up, though. You didn't
sprung it
on
you.
You didn't tell me we were going to bring that up.
I had a note. I forgot. I had a note on it.
I think it's one of those situations where it's a Reddit account, so it's
weirdly specific. Right?
It's unsourced,
weirdly specific,
and I think it's important to note that it is unsourced.
It's just some guy.
It's just
some guy that is like purposely
some
indescript.
Guy. It is just some guy on the internet. But I did also find it specific, oddly detailed.
Yes, it's oddly detailed.
Yeah. So
yeah,
I'll let the investigators deal with that. I'm sure they're already on that. I'm sure they're.
I have that I'm saving. I have a Kevin Durant conspiracy theory that is traced all the way up the ladder to Jam Najafi that I'll save because my fan fiction is not meant to increase anybody's hopes in any way, and I don't want this to become a Lakers podcast, essentially, with the level of fan fiction that we can get to.
We might just need to introduce a Conspiracy of the Week segment to get us through the summer, to be honest. I know you're full of ideas, so.
Yeah. Hey, so everyone's two favorite fan bases in the NBA, the Warriors and the Celtics, are now meeting in the NBA Finals.
I'm
Warriors,
excited.
Of course, defeated the Mavericks in 5, the Celtics in 7, above the Miami Heat. Yeah, I think it could be good basketball. Seeing one of these two teams win a title is not overly exciting. The Celtics could have the most NBA titles, and the Warriors could just win another one to add to their pile of championships. So it's nothing super exciting about that.
Sure. I will be honest in that I didn't watch a single game of the conference finals on either side. I just couldn't bring myself to do it. No, I don't think there's any shame in admitting that. I think most Suns fans, actually, judging from how dead my Twitter timeline has been for the past couple weeks, I think barely anyone was watching except for maybe Kellen Olson. I understand if people will continue to not be interested in watching the finals too, by the way, because you just need the mental break, or because maybe you just don't care about teams outside of Phoenix like that. But I do think we're going to get some good basketball here. And now that Dallas has been eliminated, it's a little bit easier for me to distance myself from the whole thing and just watch it and enjoy the good basketball. I really hope we get a good series here, because obviously I know there have been a lot of blowouts recently. I will also state for the record openly that, yeah, I know people poke fun at both of these fan bases for probably a lot of good reasons, actually. I'm definitely rooting for Boston here. I think that roster is just full of, except for Marcus Smart, likable dudes. Jason Tatum has to be one of my favorite all-around superstars in the NBA right now. He's taken.
I like how they're coached too.
I like how they're coached. He's taken so many leaps as a playmaker just in the past 6 months, and especially like during this playoff run. Obviously, sustaining difficult shot making as well. We've known for a long time that he's the real deal, but he's definitely further entrenching that point during this playoff run. And so, yeah, I mean, like, okay, on the one hand, if they win, Bill Simmons will be happy and we'll have to reckon with that. But, on the other hand, I like Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown a lot. And, I just hope it's going to be a good series overall. But I do definitely have a favorite in this one. How about you?
I have no rooting interest other than whatever team loses. I hope it's like some dramatic and painful way that they lose. That's really all I feel about this. And yeah, it'll be interesting to watch. I do plan on watching the NBA Finals. I did watch some of the conference finals, but yes, I also needed a break after overdosing on basketball.
It just hurts.
Season,
like I needed a couple of weeks where I just did anything else, and it was really nice actually. As soon as the Suns were eliminated, I realized in the ensuing week like just how much free time I had. Suddenly, it was kind of weird, but hey, I'm ready to hop back into it.
Do you have any quick thoughts on the fact that the Suns are rumored to be meeting with people in the draft all the way into the potentially the lottery, which I think points to some form of tampering if they plan on trading DeAndre Ayton?
Well, look, they have a whole scouting department. Obviously, those guys should, or at least part of a scouting department, maybe compared to other organizations, but
yeah, it's a robot. I think
those guys need to be. That's an old joke. Those guys need to be like no one gets that one. Those guys need to be doing their due diligence, is what I'm trying to say here, and certainly not just sitting on their hands. But beyond that, and beyond them just doing their due diligence of still understanding who these prospects are to make them available for the potential correct moves in the draft, you could say. I just think it's a smart idea for the Suns at this stage in their development to get some cheap labor in there, because they're going to need some as a team that's quickly approaching kind of like deep luxury tax territory and hard cap status. They need cheap labor. They need to, anyone who's been a Suns fan for a long time, learn from one of the things that became the downfall, one of the many things that became the downfall of the 7 seconds or less Suns, the fact that they ran a few particular superstars into the ground too hard and with too many minutes, and never got any young talent in there to sort of replenish those guys. The fact that, if you were a Suns fan during that era, you remember them trading away the rights to players that became Luol Deng, Rajon Rondo, Marcin Gortat, Rudy Fernandez. I think the one pick they kept during that era was Earl Clark. A lot of good that did.
Everyone's favorite.
A lot of good that did them. But, the point is, they need, if you want to be successful beyond not just next year, where obviously you're trying to win a championship, but in the post-Chris Paul years, in the post-Kevin Durant years, one might say, you need young talent as well who you can be developing. And here's the best part about it, Mike, actually, is that say what you will about the Golden State Warriors, whether you're a fan of them or not, one thing I think they've absolutely taught us on a league-wide basis this playoff run is that you can have developmental projects and still be a finals team. It's not all or nothing. Like, a lot of people have this idea of we just need to stack our roster with 34-year-old veterans and go for it. But if I had the choice between signing Carmelo Anthony to be my 13th man on a veteran minimum next season versus buying an early second-round draft pick and taking a chance on a guy, I would much rather have the second-round pick.
100%.
Because here the Golden State Warriors, they're playing Kuminga minutes in the playoffs. Not heavy minutes, but he's gotten minutes. They're playing Moses Moody minutes in the NBA playoffs.
Yeah.
You know,
they've successfully made it to the finals essentially while rebuilding their roster.
Not to mention the contributions.
It's incredible.
The obvious contributions from Jordan Poole, who's 22 years old and is a huge developmental story and one of the biggest reasons that they're there in the first place. So Golden State, take the lesson from Golden State. Yes, you need some veterans in order to kind of steady the floor. And steady the team's morale in difficult moments in the playoffs. But you don't need to completely punt on the idea of youth, which James Jones, unfortunately, I feel like definitely has for the past couple seasons. And I really hope they do a better job of at least maybe, you know, buying a late second-round pick, even if it's just that, signing an undrafted free agent. Like, at the very least, don't give us another Summer League roster this year that's just like a complete joke. Because the Summer League roster last year, if you remember, was a joke, if we're being honest.
Well, if they end up finding their way into the lottery, I might have to make an emergency trip out there.
Yeah.
What I worry about is the fact that you and I know nothing about the NBA draft and may have to actually cover a player drafted. Maybe we should even have some sort of draft special on Playback where we watch the draft and judge them based on their names and faces and have our friends join us to explain to us who these players are. And then maybe we'll make up some sort of comp for them based on the limited amount of stuff that we know about.
If there's anything that drives draft Twitter crazy, it's guys who don't know. It's guys who don't know what they're talking about going towards comps.
Jalen Rose it. Yeah, well, Jalen Rose it. All right. FYI, for those listening, we just started a Discord server for our patrons on Patreon. You can join that by joining our Patreon at patreon.com/timeline. For those who don't know what that is, it's essentially a community of Super Suns fans who are very knowledgeable, smart, and are not going to dramatically overreact.
Very
attractive,
well,
of course. And and they have lots of extra free money to give to us. And they're not going to overreact dramatically to things that happen. Well, they will, but not as dramatically as maybe Twitter and Reddit. If you'd like to join that, it'll be fun. Feel free to join us on our Patreon, and you could join that Discord at any tier. We'll be back with a Patreon episode midweek. We appreciate you guys, and yes, we'll be back soon.
For over a century, Johnny Walker has shared its bold spirit with the game of golf. Now, crafted with Devereaux Golf, Johnny Walker introduces the Johnny Walker Blue Label-inspired Sunday Golf Bag, elevating the game with sleek design, Blue Label hues, and refined gold accents. Celebrate your hole-in-one with a premium Sunday bag crafted by Devereaux Golf. Submit proof of your achievement to johnnywalker.com/blue-in-1. Please drink responsibly.